जब हम पैदा हुए जग हंसे हम रोए ऐसी करनी कर चलो हम हंसे जब रोए चदरिया ओ चदरिया जी जीनी रे जीनी
The Attorney General of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Senator the Honourable Anand Ramlogan, Minister in the Ministry of Labour and Small and Micro Enterprise and Development, the Honourable Rudranath Indar Singh, Chairman of the Board of Directors of the Public Transport Service Corporation, Mr. Devant Miraj, President and Chairman of the Board of Governors of the University of Trinidad and Tobago, Professor Kenneth Ramchand, Principal of the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine Campus, Professor Clement Sankat, Senior Research Fellow at the Academy for Letters and Public Affairs at UTT, Professor Brinsley Samru, members of the Senior Academic Faculty of the University of the West Indies, members of the Senior Academic Faculty at the University of Trinidad and Tobago, author of the book Munna's People, and the person whose work we are here to celebrate this evening, Ms. Rajni Ramlakhan, representatives of the print and electronic media, friends, relatives, and supporters of Ms. Ramlakhan, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Academy for the Performing Arts campus of the University of Trinidad and Tobago on the grounds of the National Academy for the Performing Arts. May I please ask you to stand for the national anthem of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. And we will be led by Ms. Nikisha Nelson of the Academy for Arts and Letters.
Forced from the love of liberty in the fires of hope and prayer, with boundless faith in our destiny, we solemnly declare, side by side we stand, islands of the blue Caribbean Sea, this our native land, we pledge our lives to thee. Ere every creed and race finds an equal place, and may God bless our nation. Ere every creed and race finds an equal place, and may God bless our nation.
Thank you. You may be seated. The University of Trinidad and Tobago and the Academy for Letters and Public Affairs at UTT join with Ms. Ramlakhan in welcoming you to the launch of the book Munna's People. Before we launch into the program of events, we would like to present the following information to you for your safety and guidance. These guidelines are provided by the Office of the Campus Manager. With regard to house rules, we ask that you confine yourselves to this floor and that you do not leave the space within which you are. Washrooms are located along the hallway outside of this room. Male washrooms are on the left along the hallway, and female washrooms are on your right. Eating or drinking or chewing gum is not permitted in this room. Please either put cell phones on silent or turn them off at this time. With regard to evacuation of the building, there is no fire drill planned for today, and therefore you are not expected to hear an alarm. However, in the event of any emergency, an alarm will be sounded or you will be notified by our security personnel. In this case, you will be required to exit this hall and enter the building immediately by using the 2 exit doors at the back of this hall. Proceed through the glass doors within which you entered the building. If you are in any of the washrooms, we also ask that you leave and exit the building immediately. We ask that you do not run or panic, but you must proceed briskly. Once outside the building, please go down the stairs to your right and proceed to the southwestern car park, where you will assemble, remain, and await further instructions. Our security personnel remain ready to assist in this evacuation if it becomes necessary at all. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for your attention. I now invite you to enjoy a multimedia presentation which will formally introduce Munna's people to the people of Trinidad and Tobago and indeed the world. Do enjoy the evening with us. Thank you.
A pleasant good evening to Senator the Honorable Anand Ramlogan, Attorney General of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Professor Ken Ramchand, President of the University of Trinidad and Tobago, Professor Hollis Liverpool, Professor of Calypso Arts at the University of Trinidad and Tobago, Professor Clement Sankat, Principal of the University of the West Indies St. Augustine Campus, Professor Brinsley Samaru, Senior Research Fellow at the University of Trinidad and Tobago, Mr. Devan Maraj, Chairman of the Board of Directors of the Public Transportation Service Corporation, many other distinguished guests, some of whom I may not be able to mention tonight. Distinguished guests, friends, well-wishers, this is Munna's people. I do apologize for the bit of a setback that we just experienced. It's a technical glitch, but it's something I'm sure we'll be able to get over soon. It is a privilege to be in your company as a chairman. I am Satish Raghu. We are here to celebrate the work, the masterpiece, the treasure that we call Munna's people. And when we hear about Munna's people, we should not only think about a story that is told, we should think about a story that was lived. Not lived by one particular person, but by each and every person in this country, because it has an appeal and a scope that everyone can feel and everyone can enjoy, partake from. It is with great pleasure that I present to you a literary review done by Professor Ken Ramchand, President and Chairman of the Board of Governors at the University of Trinidad and Tobago. I'm so sorry. There's been a slight change of plan. We now have Ms. Rajni Ramlakhan, author of the book Munna's People, coming forth to do a review of the book. And I'll have you know that Rajni has been a pioneer for women in this country. She has been working in the political, social, and religious circuit throughout the many years of her existence. And she's currently the Corporate Communications Manager at the National Maintenance Training and Security Company Limited, MTS. and she is now my mentor. So, it is with great honor and privilege that I present to you Ms. Rajni Ramlakhan to do a review of Munna's people.
All protocols observed. I'm coming up earlier than expected in the program because we thought that it would be better for me to tell you about how Munna's people came about before we carried on with the other formal parts. The story of Munna's people is the story of all the people of Trinidad and Tobago in the 1960s. Life then was far different from how we know it. There was a lot of poverty around, but the country was young. We had just become independent, and the people were even younger. And they were not really deterred by the poverty. There was a spirit in them that made them struggle to be better, to become what we are today, because for all intents and purposes, we are a successful people. Our intelligence is quite large. We have a huge middle class, a growing middle class. But this is to remind us of how it was in the beginning. It wasn't always like this, and of the struggles and the hopes and dreams of the people of the 60s. Munna, as described in the book, is on every girl of every village. She's not one person. She's made up of different personalities that I put together to make a kind of conglomerate figure of the 60s, a conglomerate child of the 60s. The other characters are people she would have interacted with, people around her, the experiences are the experiences that she would have had in the 60s. And it was very difficult to get one person to do that, to fit that kind of story that I wanted to tell. So I had to put different personalities into the main character. So people ask me if Munna is me. No, it's not me. Part of it is me. Part of it is, my sister, for instance. Part of it is my mother. Part of it would be the children that I interacted with in school. And school was always a very important part in the lives of children in the 60s because it was the only place you went to outside of home and the village. Cinemas, if they were there, we were not, we were not going to the cinemas because we didn't have the money to do so. If there were other forms of entertainment, we didn't know about it. Most people had a radio in the house, and apart from the radio, it was school, and that was really to our benefit because we were able to experience life, to go outside and play and mingle with the elders in the village. They tell us all the stories. They tell us about life from where they came, and most of them in the book would have been indentured or former indentured servants, but they interacted with the other people in the society. So it was really a learning kind of life, different from the kind of learning that is taking place now. I'm not saying that we don't have learning now, but the kind of learning we did was quite different from what it is now. And I'm sure that most of us would know the era I'm talking about and would have experienced it. But I think we may have forgotten it. And this was my attempt to remind us of how life was and to stir some memories and for you to go back into the past, to bring back up your memories, and to also enjoy it along with Munna. I'm also hoping that the book will be able to help the young people today to understand what life was like in the past. Because there's always said that if you don't know where you came from, then it will be difficult for you to carry on in the future. History is a very important part of our lives, and I'm hoping that the book, Munna's People, will bring some of our history to us. I felt that the people, these ordinary people, had something to say, and not often do they get the opportunity to speak for themselves. And sometimes maybe they can't. They probably think they don't have the skills to do it. But I thought it would be a pity if their lives went untold. So it was my attempt to do that, to give the story of those simple people who gave so much to us and who really are greatly responsible for where we are today. But I don't want you to go away feeling that it's a gloomy book and, not at all. The people enjoyed life. Those people I'm writing about enjoyed life. In fact, they didn't even know they were poor or supposed to be deprived. Because what was there to compare with when everywhere there was poverty? People were of the same economic background. So they had nothing to compare with. And it started from there. That was the beginning of the building process. Those were the first bricks that went into making our society. And that is Munna's People. Gave me a lot of pleasure in writing it. Took a long time to get it published. I think I'd completed it in the 90s. Professor Ramchand and Professor Samaru were the first two people to look at it and told me about the publicity possibility of the novel. Unfortunately, it was harder to achieve than I thought. Finally, it's here, and I hope you enjoy it. Thank you.
Many thanks for that inspirational, reflective, and emotional review of the book that is Munna's People. I'm sure, as many of you all are, you're very curious. I'm very curious about finding out more about what this book is about. For those who have experienced the 60s, according to the editor, for those who have experienced the 60s, it's about time that they remember and cherish those memories again. And for those who have not, read, experience, learn. This is what Munna's People is about. We move on to another item, and that would have been, according to the program we have here, an endorsement message given by the Honorable Rudranath Singh, Minister in the Ministry of Labour. However, he is unable to be here at the moment due to reasons beyond his control, and we do send his apologies. So, instead, what we'll have is our Honorable Attorney General, Senator the Honorable Anand Ramlogan, to come and share a few words of endorsement and appreciation to the audience.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Author Rajni Ramlakhan, Professor Brinsley Samaru, Mr. Kumar Mahabir, Professor Kenneth Ramchand, and so many other distinguished ladies and gentlemen and friends. It's an honor to be here. I am here both in a personal and official capacity, because I've known Ms. Rajni Ramlakhan for quite some time. In fact, our friendship dates back to over perhaps 15 to 20 years now. And I came to know Rajni when she wrote a newspaper column in the Express newspaper. And I remember identifying with what she had to say, because I thought that she gave voice and articulated thoughts and feelings that at the time it wasn't really something that was very popular to do. And I respected her for remaining true to what she thought was the right thing and remaining true to her own thoughts. And it was there that I maintained contact with Rajni. This book, by its very name, gives us an insight both into the persona of the book and the psyche of the author and what would have raced through her mind as the spiraling myriad of thoughts lend itself into the manuscript for this book. No one in their right mind would probably name a book Munna's book or Munna's. The name Munna is awkward. It doesn't conjure something that we are familiar with. But that by itself, just a choice of name for the book, tells us that the author is trying to remain true and dear and firm to that which she perceives to be her own reality. Munna, awkward sounding, I'm not sure if it's Hindi, English, I'm told it may be in Indian folklore a term of endearment that means beta, or it's an affectionate term for a son or a little child that you'll see playing in your neighbor's yard, as it were. But the mere fact that she can choose the name Munna in itself reflects and codifies the spirit that infuses the thoughts of the author that is reduced into this book. Because Munna, as unfamiliar and awkward sounding as it is, Munna had a life. Munna lived a life. And Munna had a story that she felt deserved to be told. It gives me great pleasure to see in this audience Professor Kenneth Ramchand, a former independent senator and a distinguished and respected literary critic and academic. Because of that kind, his presence by itself signifies a support, the kind of support that we see so sadly lacking from so many in our society, who would want to come to speak to halls that are full of people with dignitaries and cocktails and the like, but would not come to give support and endorsement to Munna. I salute you, sir, for being here. Professor Brinzi Samaru, another one of our cherished mentors and someone whose work I've admired over the years, who have also tried to document what is a fast receding part of our social and cultural and religious history, trying to grab it and grasp it, pretty much like the tail of a dog that's where the body's already passed through the door, and he's trying to grab the tail, the end of the tail, to yank it and pull it back through the door, so that we won't forget where we came from, who we are, and what our identity is all about. So it's also very good to see you are here to lend support to this book, because I believe that Munna is perhaps one of those persons in your historical pieces that you've written about.
During the week, Munna helped with the housework.
I think Munna is hearing me talking about. I'll be happy to give way if the video is ready. But you would have seen that the program has me down as doing the feature address. I came up before because I think it's only fitting, I don't think it's appropriate for me to do a feature address in the presence of a distinguished Professor Kenneth Ramchand when he's on the program. So I prefer to come and have my little say because I speak from the heart on this matter, and I've known Ms. Ramlakhan for quite some time. But ladies and gentlemen, we are losing part of who we are. We are losing part of the psychological, sociological, and cultural landscape that has influenced the psyche of the Trinidadian. The Trinidadian identity is a confluence of so much that goes into the potpourri and the kalaloo that makes us Trini. Indian, African, Chinese, Caucasian, but so much from different lands, so much from different cultures, so much from different peoples. And all these strands are woven into one thick rope that we call Trini. Munna has his place in that rope. Munna's identity is one that is there to be preserved and identified by the author so that we can appreciate that that one strand that is Munna is not to be outdone or lost in that rope. For that is our life. Each of us, our life is but one strand in that never-ending rope of humanity. It's part of a link in a society, in an organization where we work. But you too, each of us, you too, you are a Munna. A Munna reminds us of Shakespeare's famous quote from Macbeth, Act 5, Scene 5. Life is but a walking shadow, full of sound and fury signifying nothing. Because that is what our life is. Some people say that your life is reduced to the dash that appears between the year of your birth and the year of your death on your tombstone. And that is, this book is about that dash. It is about Munna trying to write on that dash and trying to cry to say, I too lived, and this is my dash. So Rajni, I want to congratulate you, your dedication, your diligence, your perseverance, and your determination in bringing this book forward. I think your resilience and your capacity for steering the course to achieve your ambition is one that is noteworthy and worthy of emulation. I think we can all, at the end of reading this book, come to the conclusion that we are gathered here this evening, not by coincidence or by luck, but by the end result of a woman who held true and firm to her belief and wanted to hold dearest and most precious her thoughts about growing up in Trinidad and Tobago in a rustic rural setting and write a book so that those who come after will know about Sukunya, the green-faced man, and things like that. My children will not know what a sugarcane field looks like. They may never be able to race down the road in Ben Lomond village from where I come, to rush behind a bull cart, to grab at a stalk of cane before it reaches the reformed sugarcane factory to be processed. They will not know the joy and the childhood memory of rushing after the bull cart to jump on top of it so you can get a ride because your book bag is too heavy or because it is raining. These memories are part of the cherished Trini that our children will not enjoy except by people like Ms. Ramlakhan, who will preserve it, protect it, and leave it for posterity in the form of a book. By people like Dr. Brinsley Samaru and Professor Kenneth Ramchand, who will lend their support here. Ladies and gentlemen, I've always been immersed in reading political science and constitutional law and cases, and it was a bit of an anomaly for me to read this authentic work from Rajni Ramlakhan. But I read it and reread it, and I enjoyed it very much. It was different from what I was accustomed to reading, and it provided me with a very stimulating intellectual diversion, so that when you see me in Parliament not speaking and reading, it's not matters of the state always. But I was totally enthralled and captivated as I could have identified and empathized with the experiences of the protagonists and the other characters in this book. It was quite astounding to see how my early years of childhood through adolescence could be vividly recaptured through the vehicle of literary experience. I felt as though I was reliving at times the many stages in my own life. Moreover, I felt as though someone for once was able to have my life collated in one document. And this book is but that, a collage of experiences about rustic rural Trinidad and Tobago and growing up there. The thematic concerns and the subliminal messages in Ms. Ramlakhan's work of fiction are quite potent and applicable to many of us in Trinidad and Tobago. They depict real-life issues that have plagued many of us and are still evident in society today. Issues such as the emotional and physical dislocation as a result of the changed format of governance, self-identity issues in a plural society, the crippling effects of discrimination, the plight of poor and underprivileged. Ladies and gentlemen, I will refrain from divulging too much more on the book, just to whet your appetite to say I think it's well worth getting a copy and having a read for yourself. I want to pause to commend the University of Trinidad and Tobago for lending its support and associating itself with this book launch. For far too long, there's been a void in the local, in terms of local literature and support for local authors and aspiring authors. And I'm happy to see that where other institutions may have failed to step up, the University of Trinidad and Tobago has come forward to give that kind of support. I wish to urge the UTT to continue this trend and to give that kind of support so we can protect our indigenous folklore, our indigenous culture, and our own local memories. I see anthropologist Dr. Kumar Mahabir, who is himself a prolific author and has done human service in that regard, having written books about edible plants and that we use from our grandmother days come up for medicinal, their medicinal qualities and their herbal treatments. And he's written many other books ranging from food and whatever. And so I commend you for that. I salute you for the work that you have done. At this juncture, I would like to conclude because today really is not for myself, but for Rajni and Munna. Rajni, you have earned this place in our local English literature history. You are richly deserving of it. And I want to tell you that after reading your masterpiece, I am now inclined to read the genres of literature like realistic fiction, memoirs, and semi-biographical works. Permit me to leave you with this most apt and fitting quote that will come to you and resonate with you when you've completed reading Munna's People. Books are the quietest and most constant of friends. They are the most accessible and wisest of counselors and the most patient of teachers. I invite you, ladies and gentlemen, in your quiet moment, pause for a moment of detached reflection and introspection. Read Munna's book. Imbibe the tale. Imbibe the living, the life, colorful in all its Trinidadian glory. It is accessible and it will yet be a wise counsel to the development of your own identity as a person and as a people for Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you very much.
So very, very much, Senator the Honorable Anand Ramlogan. I think that having such a book endorsed by this prominent member of society, a person who has a reputation for fighting for justice and equality of all people, regardless of creed, color, race, religion, I think it's an excellent start to a successful launch. So please, let's give ourselves a let's round of applause for that. And I know that the program may not be particularly in order, and we do apologize for that. A bit of technical glitches here and there. But in keeping with Munna's People, we can see it as a splash of color. It is something that happens on the spot of time. There is no planning. Things just seem to take place at the spur of the moment. And like Munna's People, our program seems to be flowing in the same way. It gives me great pleasure to present to you now, I wouldn't say a dance, but I would say a dramatic recital that was composed by a very creative young woman who has been trained with Srimati Suzanne Mohip, and she's a current student, at the University of the West Indies. And when I say that she dances like as gracefully as a swan, she does. And she has the beauty of a goddess to back it all up. So, it gives me great pleasure to present to you Ms. Shivani Manik to do for you an item called the Rhythm of Munna's People. And another thing I'd like to mention before I leave the stage to let you all feast your eyes, the piece that she's going to be dancing to is actually an excerpt from the book itself. So if you want to get an inside view of what Munna's People is all about, this is your chance. So here's presenting Ms. Shivani Manik who will be also accompanied by Mr. Dylan Bastille. Thank you.
From the weekend, there was excitement and pleasure beyond her wildest dreams. It was the time when she would accompany her relatives deep into the forest to collect firewood and tie out the cattle to graze. One particular Saturday, Munna was asked to keep an eye on one of the calves which seemed not to be quite well. But she was so caught up in the revelries with her friends that she forgot all about the calf. Late in the evening, about the time her guardians would return to collect her, Munna realized the calf had wandered away. After explaining what had happened to her friends, Munna hurried away to search for it. The trail took her deeper and deeper into the forest, into areas she had never been to before. Yet there was no sign of the calf. Night began descending and Munna grew very afraid. She tried to retrace her steps, but seemed to be going only in circles. She could not find her way back to the spot where her friends would be. By then, it had come quite dark, and Munna resigned herself to the fact that she would be there for the night. She sought shelter under the nearest tree and prepared to wait for the morning. Soon the night air exploded with the sounds of the forest, terrifying sounds, howling, shrieking, grunting, roaring. Out of the darkness, glowing eyes peered at her. Where there were trees, now stood giants with huge arms, snakes slithering up and down them, reaching out to grab and crush a small frame. And to crown it all, the cold began piercing her tiny body down to her tiny bones, causing her to shake violently. Munna was quite certain that she would not survive the night. Overcome by tiredness and mental fatigue, Munna slowly started to drift off into sleep. As she entered the zone of in-betweenity, between sleep and wake, she had a vision of a green, liquidy face rippling towards her. Munna shrank back in horror, but to no avail. Cloaked, outstretched arms encircled her, and soon she was completely enveloped. But to Munna's surprise, a warm sensation crept over her, and she began to feel incredibly secure. The cold, horrible world outside completely shut off, and she sank into a soft cushion of comfort.
Truly magnificent, and of course, in keeping with Munna's people and what the book is all about. You should read it. Our next item on the agenda will be not just an endorsement of the book, but it will be combined with greetings from the noble institution that has so willingly lent us its services, and that will be none other than Professor Ken Ramchand, the President of the University of Trinidad and Tobago, for his literary review and greetings from the University of Trinidad and Tobago.
Attorney General, members and officials of government, members of the UTT, distinguished guests. The university is pleased to be associated with the launch of Rajni's book. The university will continue to show what it means to be the National University of Trinidad and Tobago. And we will continue to encourage dialogue between the university and the whole society, all its communities and its communities of interest. We will continue our groundbreaking research into the hidden and repressed cultures of Trinidad and Tobago. Attorney General, if the UTT has its way, And if its ideas prevail, your children will see the cane fields again. As UTT's plan for agriculture, food production, food processing, and the creation of a breed of professional and scientific farmers begins to unfold. I'm happy to say a few words about Rajni's book. It's called a literary review, but I really wasn't planning to do a literary review. But then, of course, anytime a literary critic talks, he is doing a literary review. It's not a full-scale literary review. I say recently published, but as Rajni has told us, she's been working on it for many years. She's writing about the world of her growing up in the 1950s and 1960s. And she is writing as a person of Indian origin who lived her early years in a Trinidad village, the majority of whose population is people of Indian origin. Those who grew up in that period or in similar villages will recognize themselves and people they know as they read this book. So we can think about it as a book about growing up. We should remind ourselves that it is very significantly the growing up of a girl. The growing up of a girl in a community and a larger society that is suffering even now from not having recognized the personhood of the female and the capacity of the all too often excluded other half, their capacity to make a difference to the character and values of our society. You know, for a very long time in West Indian literature, we used to say that George Lamming's In the Cast of My Skin was the West Indian novel of childhood. And you know, if you manage to go through the 400 pages of that book, there's not one little girl in it. Not one. And a whole generation celebrated it as the West Indian novel of childhood. It might have been the West Indian novel of boyhood. But we've come a long way since those days. Munna's People is not a novel. It is a collection of stories and sketches in which the girl named Munna is either the main character or the person remembering for her own understanding of herself and her world stories passed on by the elders among whom she is growing up. And the first impression, as you read it, the first impressions, you get a strong sense of village life, you get a strong sense of family, you get a strong sense of community. You get descriptions of how the households are organized, the domestic pains and pleasures. You see children at work, and you find that their work, because of the way in which a child's imagination works, work turning into play. So you could hardly separate children's work from children's play. You see shaping and sustaining community activities, storytelling on moonlight nights in what are virtually open-air theaters. You see the participation in prayers, kathas, and festivals like Hosei. And Rajni points out that in those days, you hardly felt any difference between Muslim and Hindus. They celebrated Hosei together and alike. You feel the unavoidable presence of elders and other parenting figures, and you pass, or pass through your mind physical and mental landmarks like Kutias, the Ramayana, and the Gita. So on the first reading, you get these impressions of this world. Self-contained, fairly idyllic, but already there are seepages from the surrounding world. Influences are floating in, and you begin to feel the pressures of education, and you begin to feel the pressures of English. So Munna's father has command of Hindi and Sanskrit, but Munna, not at all. She's going to school. She's learning English, and she's learning to see the world partly through English. Munna's father is adapting. He's versed in English too, and he's like a civil servant schoolmaster, getting birth certificates and death certificates for people, dealing with the bureaucracy for the villagers, writing letters, reading newspapers to them. And of course, in this village, you're already aware of education, the dreaded common entrance examination. There are two siblings already studying overseas. And you begin to see the replacement of education in the community, the informal systems of education. You begin to see the replacement and dislodgement of that by the education system based upon examinations. You also see in this book the pooling of folklore. The villagers are aware of Sukiyan, and they are haunted by Sukiyan, Laja Bless, Green-Faced Man, Dwens. This record of growing up in the 50s and 60s in an Indian village shows the female struggle with the ties that bind. Those ties that support also bind. The limitations imposed by a protective patriarchy. Munna's character as an opening batsman is short-lived to the one match in which she top scores. Her boyfriend arrives suddenly and he behaves like a human being. But as soon as the father finds out, we suspect that he doesn't just disappear, he is made to disappear even faster than he came. Sumintra, whose husband-to-be is now coming to see her, as they say. Sumintra is nowhere to be found. She has bolted. Munna is forbidden higher education by her father and is prescribed the valium of a quick marriage. He tells her, education? You would be mad? I feel you're too restless, and only marriage will make you settle down. It was a nice little conversation. One morning, he called her to the kitchen to have a talk with her. Munna, he began, while you was away, I went to see a boy for you to get married. He seemed to be a good Hindu boy, and I like him. Munna, but what about me? Don't I have to see him and like him too? Father, why? I like him. Did I find that jokey? What? Rajni, think I come off here? Let's laugh. Yeah? Yeah. At its literal level, it is a good account of Indian village life in the period. The social surface comes over. You feel its wholeness, you feel the tensions, you feel the change that is beginning to take place. But A.G. used the word subliminal, and I thought he was going to take up my whole speech. Thank God he didn't go there. The book works at another level that we can call figurative. There are many images, events, and scenes, expressing things that the author's antennae may have picked up, but which she may not have been consciously aware of. When I tell writers this, and they're unwise enough to say how you could say that, as I could say that, you just write, and I just read. I not challenge you as a writer, do challenge me as a reader. Reader is a very professional thing. You know? And I can see things that you put down, or that God put down through you that you didn't see, because when you're writing, you're a lucky fella. Something has inspired you. You could work at it, but something has inspired you. You're a channel, you're a medium. And you, the medium, might not understand all that the speaking in tongues that you are doing means. Somebody has to come and read the code, decipher. So, think of some of the stories, the whole group of stories that are told by older figures in the village. RG tells a story of the abnormal rage that drives Raja to beat his twin sister to death and deposit her body in the river. She tells about his grief and of the voice that lures him to the riverbank where he drowns, chasing a beautiful flower. And then, in the final scene, what we think is the transformation and reunion of brother and sister into two flowers floating side by side in the water. Now that breaks away completely from the social descriptions that you are getting. This is something that leads us to wonder about, human relations, about what it is that drives a person like Raja to do what he does. Why does the story allow them to turn into flowers and float? It is about disruption, destruction, and reconstitution. It's a dread story when you read it. He kills her because she cooked nice, and one day she cooked better than ever. And the food tasted good because while she was cooking, she cut her hand, and the blood went in the food. And he had the food, and he said, "Oh God, heal your hand sweet." Didn't mean literally her hand sweet. And she said, "Yeah, well, I cut my hand when I was cooking, and the blood went in there." And that really drives him mad. That's why he kills her, for that taboo that was broken. There are children here, so I wouldn't go for that. Then you have Harry telling a story in a story significantly called Zombies in the Cane Field, telling the story of the restless spirits of people who died, but who wasn't ready to dead. And Ranchi doesn't say, oh, in death, yeah, people get killed and all. But what you do, those people who died before their time and who wasn't ready to dead, to me that is a more potent statement about the oppression that people faced than any big essay about how they whipped them and they do this and then Haruki and that eat pepper and all. That's okay, we want to know the details, but the emotions and the resonances. And then, very interesting, the first story in the book is about Munna's paternal grandfather, Bahadur, who ran away from India because he got in a fight with a fella and killed him and he didn't want to face up to any justice. So he came to Trinidad. And all the time he's in Trinidad, he's saying to himself, oh God, why did I run? Why did I run? Why didn't I try? And he stuns himself with work and all. He works flat out all day right up and then he collapses because he doesn't want to think. He's haunted by memories of his life in the other place. And then he meets a nice girl. When he meets a nice girl, your life really changes. His life changes. And you feel, well, I'm going to make it now. I'm going to get a new life. But he can't. He's haunted by the past. He's haunted by a past that he never came to terms with. He is incomplete The new life can never really take off as a new life because he carries with him too many wounds and too much of the trauma of that scene from which he came. So he meets a girl, they get married, baby came, life was complete. A new life in a new world. But an old face pushed its way to the front, contorted with pain. Memories of a past insanity flooded back. A mother grieving for a son, a wife missing her husband, a son deprived of his father, and Bahadur screamed. He screamed that old face out of his mind. He screamed those old people out of his thoughts. He screamed that old place out of his memory. And he was still screaming when they took him away. Munna sat quietly, seemingly paralyzed, as her papa finished telling her the story of her unfortunate grandfather, her Aja. He was deemed to be irreparably mad and never left the confines of the St. Anne's madhouse, where he died quietly one day, a lost, forgotten soul. He came into this world unobtrusively and left unobtrusively, perhaps wandering the heavenly regions in search of peace. So again, you're getting the social documentation, but you're getting these potent images and scenes that tell you so much more about the trauma and about the conditions of our lives today. So Coolie is the first story in the book. And as we proceed, we get the account of her childhood, her career in secondary school, her defiance of her father, and her departure to an overseas university. But the book doesn't end there. It sounds like a success story, but it doesn't end on that note. The last story in the book is called The Mask of Death. And the character is Munna. She's now middle-aged. She's a widow. And in the story, she makes a decision to emigrate to Canada. I find that so sad. Munna decided there and then that she would move to Scarborough, Ontario. She would join her sister and her family. They would walk in the park, whisk away for a weekend in Niagara Falls, go shopping in the Gerrard Street Indian Bazaar, savor the picturesque fall season, enjoy the latest Bollywood movies and shows. And in time, Munna would forget the island she loved so much, this tiny island in the Caribbean, surrounded by blue-green sea, sun and sand, and laid-back people. Even more importantly, she would forget the mask of death. And what I'm trying to suggest, as happy and enduring and resourceful as the people in this community are, they are seeing the mask of death. And so the book has a kind of duality. On the surface, you admire them for their survival and endurance, but then you know down below is what they're surviving, what they're enduring is not the daily tribulations of not getting food or a place to sleep or a good job. They're almost in an existential struggle with the mask of death, the face of death. And this puts the struggle of all of us to achieve and to be in a not so optimistic light. It's good to recognize that we have achieved. It's good to recognize that we are and we have become. But you really have to humble up yourself and be aware of things in your own past that you don't fully understand, but which are still a part of you, and things in life, in the world, that are there to haunt you no matter where you come from, Africa, India, or China. The book is full of death. Just read it. Perhaps there's a philosophical dimension that this book is trying to explore, is groping towards some kind of perspective on life and on death. It's a very strange story there, Lovers Beyond Time, a story of reincarnation. And there is, in one called An Unusual Encounter, Munna has just had a minor operation, and she's lying on a bed beside a woman called Sushila, who has also had an operation, an older woman. Yeah. And this is what Sushila says to her. You know, Munna, may I call you that? To most people, death conjures up fear, pain, and a deep sense of loss. This is understandable, because no one can claim to know what precisely goes on while one is dying and what happens after death. We have the word of the great Swamis and enlightened men that death is only a journey to another life. According to Hinduism, life is a long journey to God, and we may make several stops on the way. Knowing this gives us comfort and strength to face this thing that is unknown to us. Well, I could go on and give you a real review, but I'll just close with one more paragraph from this story, where Sushila describes what happened to her when she went under and having the surgery. She felt, I was on this deserted strip of land, not physically, but my eyes were roving around like the eyes of a movie camera. There were huge wooden wheels all around, and I kept fretting at the clutter all around. I had the impression that I was at the beginning of time. Then I heard the sounds of celestial voices all around chanting mantras. I kept thinking that I had to move on, but unable to do so without mother. Which mother I was looking for. Then it struck me that I was looking for the Divine Mother and wouldn't move without her. What I'm trying to suggest is that although this book speaks about achievement, endurance, success, courage, it tells us even more. It tells us that life on this flat plane of existence is not enough, and it is not all. And perhaps what that community began to lose, what our whole society has lost, and what the world is losing, is a sense, a real feeling about how you can overcome death, the kind of spirituality you need so that death does not become the terminus, death does not control your life. You have to see death as a pathway or a gateway. And maybe, I don't know if I'm misreading her, but I would feel that in this book, the spirit really comes down upon Rajni and has her groping towards something that our society and world society is losing, the loss of spirituality, the loss of a sense of sacred time. We're all too tired in this 7-day week, 24 hours a day, living by the clock. It is profane time in which we live. And perhaps one of the most profound meanings of Munna's people is its attempt to push us towards a recognition of this loss of sacred time and the need to live our lives in such a way that we can recover it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that very insightful, detailed and comprehensive analysis of Munna's people. Don't you think that that's a reason not to buy the book, eh? As comprehensive as it may be, the book itself has so much details that one cannot express in simply a few minutes. So, just excuse me a minute. These mics are not made for my height. We come to a more interesting part of the program, and that is where we give salute. We give thanks to Munna's people in all its glory, and we do so in the form of music. So we have the song of Munna's people. And when we hear the song of Munna's people, we're not just thinking the birds, the trees, nature, as we heard in the dance performance before. We're going to hear the culture, the rhythmic beat that beats into every heart and every soul of the people that make up Munna's community. So while we have our musicians on standby, while our musicians are getting ready, I'll just give you a brief introduction to who will be performing for you on stage. Firstly, our vocalist will be none other than former councillor Deonarayan Raghu, who is the manager of the Blind Welfare Association in San Fernando. So please give him a lusty round of applause. And he has most willingly decided to share his musical talents with us and not only sing, but replenish our hearts, replenish our souls with the music that existed in our people for so many years ago. And at his side, we have Shiva Manik, who is a student at the University of the West Indies, an excellent tabla player, I might add, and he's also a student under Sri Rana Mohip. So, I suppose that things are getting in order.
जब हम पैदा हुए जग हंसे हम रोए ऐसी करनी कर चलो हम हंसे जग रोए चदरिया ओ चदरिया जीनी रे जीनी जीनी रे जीनी हे राम नाम रस बीनी चदरिया जीनी रे जीनी हे राम नाम रस बीनी चदरिया जीनी रे जीनी अष्टकमल का चरक बनाया पांच चक्र के पूरी चदरिया पांच चक्र के पूरी अष्टकमल का चरक बनाया पांच चक्र के पूरी चदरिया पांच चक्र के पूरी नौ दस लोरी ने तुमको दीनी मूर्ख लोग वेद नहीं जाने मूर्ख लोग वेद नहीं जाने दिन दिन मैंने पीनी चलिया जीनी रे जीनी हे राम नाम सकीनी चलिया जीनी रे जीनी द्रौ प्रहलाद सुदामने ओरे निर्मल सुख दिल की चदरे निर्मल सुख दिल की द्रौ प्रहलाद सुदामने ओरे निर्मल सुख दिल की चदरिया निर्मल सुख दिल की दास कबीरा ऐसी ओरी दास कबीरा ऐसी ओरी जियो के जियो करली जीनी रे जीनी हे राम नाम हे राम नाम हे राम नाम सकीनी चलिया जीनी रे जीनी रे जीनी रे जीनी
I think that deserves another round of applause. A breath of fresh air. And it brings back some memories, doesn't it? Yes, it does. Special thanks to to Mr. Devnarayan Raghu and Mr. Shiva Manik. Moving right along to even further express our appreciation, I'd like to call for this segment of the program the author, the person who brought this book to life, Ms. Rajni Ramlakhan. And to assist Ms. Ramlakhan, I'd like to invite on stage the very lovely and beautiful Ms. Ashaki Scott. For your presence here today, I'd like to, on behalf of Ms. Rajni, express my sincerest gratitude to the Honorable Attorney General, Senator the Honorable Anand Ramlogan, Professor Ken Ramchand, and Professor Brinsley Samaru. So, let me just make sure that the stage is properly well set, and then we'll distribute. Send them with a copy. So what instead we chose to do was to send a picture that represents the essence of Munna's people. So I'd like to invite on stage Senator the Honorable Anand Ramlogan, Attorney General of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, to receive this token of our appreciation. A round of applause. I'd like to call Professor Ken Ramchand to the stage. Round of applause. And last but certainly not least, Professor Brinsley Samaru. Assuming that all 3 tokens were properly well distributed, I'd like to invite the author and the person who made it all happen to come to the podium and express the vote of thanks. Please give it up with a last round of applause for Ms. Rajni Ramlakhan.
Observed, and I'm choosing this easy route out because I'm going to be naming so many people that if I were to go the other route, I'd spend the whole night just salutating people. First, I'd like to thank the Honorable Attorney General for gracing us with his presence. I've always wanted to say this publicly, never had the opportunity to do it, and so I'm going to do it tonight. The Attorney General, but he was not Attorney General then, stood by my side during some of the most difficult years of my life, when I felt ostracized by the society and that there was no one for me. But he stood by me, saw me through those years, 10 long years, and I saw up front how hard he worked. And I'm talking about my case, my lawsuit against a newspaper, a weekly newspaper. It was a terribly difficult time for me, and I guess I was not the kind of person people would want to be associated with because of the claims of the tabloid. However, Anand Ramlogan said, "Rajni, you were not wrong. What you said was right, and I'm going to stand by you no matter what." And he did. Many long, sleepless nights Anand spent building up a defense for my case. And you know what? We lost in the first stage. And I totally collapsed. I felt I couldn't go on. Again, Anand said, "No, this is not the end. We will fight all the way to the Privy Council." Fortunately, we didn't have to go that far. At the appeal courts, the local appeal courts, the judges agreed that the claims of the tabloid were all wrong and that we had in fact won the case. And I really need to thank the Attorney General for standing by me. Thank you. And I am happy to say that some of the things that I wrote about when I was a columnist, to see it happening today, because all I was saying then, that we needed to have an equal society where all the cultures and the races should be treated equally. And although I was not the only person saying it, by no long stretch of the imagination, because I guess I was one of the few women saying it, I was singled out to be humiliated like that. In the end, I have seen where this new government has put a multicultural policy into place, and finally, all of us will be treated equally. Thank you to the new government for that. Professor Ramchand, what can I say? She really did unveil me. As uncanny as it was. And, well, I guess I really shouldn't be surprised because Professor Ramchand has this, well, he's a reader, he's a literary expert, and he can get below the meanings of what the writer is trying to say. And he's right, I wasn't always aware that I was saying the things that I was saying. I was just a medium. But he did point them out to me, and I'm very grateful. And when that can happen from such a literary giant, it makes me feel that I have achieved something and I can really call myself a writer now. Thank you, sir. My mentor, Professor Brinsley Samaru. For me, he'll always be Dr. Samaru because I've known him like that all the time. He guided me through my university years. Also introduced me to the life of an academic, to all the wonderful conferences that I was involved with through him, all the conferences on East Indians in the diaspora. The thrill of assisting him in organizing, getting delegates here, arrange the logistics, but actually sitting and listening to these fine minds explore our lives, our futures. That was an experience unimaginable. And also another aspect of Dr. Samaru's helping me was to make me aware of the value of an Indian museum in the country, because it was at one of those conferences we had mounted the first exhibition of Indian artifacts, and the tremendous response we got from people around. I mean, it was incredible, and we saw that this is something that could be done. And finally, we do have a museum, an Indian museum, Caribbean Indian museum in the country, and I guess it started with Dr. Samaru. Can you ever repay a mentor? I don't think so. I can only hope that what I am and what I hope to become will in some way please him. Thank you, Dr. Samaru, so very much. And I want to thank all of you for being here, because I know nearly everybody by name and by face. I was really thrilled to see a really dear friend of mine, Dr. Gabrielle Hussein, after so many years. And she told me she got an invitation only today, and here she is with her cute little baby. I'm so happy to see you here, Gabby. Bring back memories. My friend Gita Maraj, always by my side. You know, we've been through all the conferences, all the experiences we've had together. I'm really happy to see her here. And also my friends from my teaching days, Leela, Madhuri, Kumari. I'm so happy to see you all here. And thank you for coming. I know you've come from a long way, and I really appreciate that. My colleagues from MTS, and I must say a very big thank you to the CEO of MTS. He couldn't be here today, but he has assisted me with this project. MTS always stands by its employees, and we have many talented people at MTS, and we have always supported. He has always supported all the people, all the employees who have shown some kind of talent in one way or the other. So I'm thanking Mr. Leonard Ratan Singh in his absence. I'm also thanking my colleagues from MTS who are here. Thank you very much. And my family, my cousins, Joyce, Anna, Tony, all of you who are here today to support me, thank you so very much for coming. And in a little while, you'll be seeing a video, a trailer of the book. We chose to end the program that way. But I would like to point out and to thank the people who acted. Not all of them are here, but there is Amber Miraj, who was one of the Munnas in the book. Vikash, who acted as Tej, Munna's brother. We have another little Munna there, Samantha, and then Munna's sister, Maya. She was acted by pretty. They're all sitting in front here. Cute little children, thank you so much for being here. And I do not know how to say thanks to this person. And then I'm saying, but then why should I say thanks? Because this project is as much his as it is mine. When over the months, the editor, publisher, and I were struggling with a book cover, a design for the book cover, and we kept coming up blank. And we were saying, well, look, we may just have to go with a plain green cover. And in walks this young man into the office, and when I wasn't looking, sneaked into my head and saw what I wanted, and designed the book cover. So he's very much part of that. He also managed this whole event tonight along with the staff of UTT, and I would really also like to thank the staff of UTT, headed by Miss Lana Allard, for that. But you heard his voice in the dance recital. You also heard him so skillfully chairing tonight's program. So then I really have to say, why should I thank him? Instead, I'd like him to share the spotlight with me. Satish Ram. And I'm glad to say that, I was very pleased to hear him say that I am his mentor. So Dr. Smaru, I did learn something from you. I am now mentoring somebody else. Once again, people, everybody, thank you so very much for being here. Oh, by the way, sorry, I have to also thank the caterers. And we have managed to present food from the 60s. So I hope you will enjoy it when you get out there. I'd also like to thank the media for being here. And I hope I didn't forget anybody. Thank you.
It's very touching and quite comprehensive. However, on Ms. Ramlakhan's behalf, I'd like to apologize for anyone whose name we did not mention. But I'm sure she, in her little way, would have thanked every single soul that has been present here this evening. It gives me great pleasure to present to you a visual aid and an insight. Not just an insight, but a color splash of whimsy, of wonder. This is Munna's People. I present to you the official launch of Munna's People in the form of our trailer. We will now pray for you today. Well, now that you have just experienced but a taste of what Munna's people has to offer, it is with great pleasure that I say the book has been launched. They are on sale outside for $100 a piece. So, as you make your way outside, do feel free to indulge. Thank you so much for your rapt attention, and do enjoy the rest of the evening. Make your way safely home. Thank you. By the way, refreshments are available. According to what Rajni has said, the refreshments, I should say, very light refreshments, are made with the inspiration from the 60s, the time frame of which the book was written. So, do feel free to indulge. Thank you.
तुझसे बयां चाहे मैंने ना किया है, पर एक लम्हा ना तेरे बिन जिया है। जाना मैंने जाना ये दिल आजमाने से, कभी ना छुपे रब्बा प्यार छुपाने से। तेरे संग लाड लगावा रे, तेरे संग लाड लगावा, तेरे संग प्यार निभावा रे, तेरे संग प्यार निभावा। बीते गुजरे लम्हों की सारी बातें तड़पाती है, दिल की सुर्ख दीवारों पे बस यादें ही रह जाती है। बाकी सब सपने होते हैं, अपने तो अपने होते हैं। तेरी मेरी राहों में चाहे दूरियां हैं, इन फासलों में भी नजदीकियां हैं। सारी रंजिशों को तू पल में मिटा ले, आजा भी जा मुझको गले से लगा ले। तेरे संग लाड लगावा रे, तेरे संग लाड लगावा, तेरे संग प्यार निभावा रे, तेरे संग प्यार निभावा। बीते गुजरे लम्हों की अपने होते हैं, अपने तो